of putting up a united front against the fight of this deadly virus. And so, folks, you have just joined us. As we always ask here on this platform, please hit that share button. We got the package here for you that you will not be disappointed. As you can see, as your host, I'm comfortably seated. Hit that share button as we go into our topic here very shortly. Or earlier, before I could come out to introduce the show, you're listening to a beautiful gospel music, and I think at this time we need music of that kind uh, to revive our spirit and take away the despair, so that we can be in the right frame of mind, as we combat this very dangerous pandemic that is not only facing our country, Liberia, but that is also facing the entire humanity in the world. And so, folks, again, my name is Anthony Shea, co-hosting here on this Monday edition of our show. This is Monday special on the Hour of Politics with me, your guy Anthony Shea. And so, what do we have for you? All politics about COVID-19. I mean, somebody might be wondering, this is a serious, deadly disease, and this guy is trying to put politics in it. No, I am not the one who is putting politics into this fight against this deadly epidemic. Maybe it is the politicians. Maybe it's the more surrogates, political pundits, who are trying to put politics in this. And we thought that it will be fair to you to be able to share with you on this major platform what are the politics that are trying to engulf the entire fight against COVID-19 as it is widely known to be right now. So coronavirus is a deadly virus, and it must be fought with all hands on deck. Is that the case in Liberia? Our leaders making the rightful decisions in the fight against this virus? Are there people who don't even believe that we have COVID-19 in Liberia? Yes, there are some people who think we do not have COVID-19 in Liberia. Are they telling the truth? And so these are the questions we will be finding answers for. And sometime during the broadcast, we will try to bring you, our guests, our audience, into the broadcast to have the opportunity to participate. And so let's get started here quickly. But before we can do, let us also give you a unique rundown of what is the status of COVID-19 as we speak. And in Liberia, recent report says that Liberia has 13 confirmed cases, according to the health authorities there. The health authorities there have reported that Liberia has 13 confirmed cases. And of the 13 confirmed cases, they are saying so far 3 deaths and 3 recoveries, meaning 3 persons have died and also 3 persons have recovered. I want to think that that is a good news there, that we have 3 persons who were able to battle this deadly disease and were able to survive. The fact that we can have survivors, I think, points to the fact that there's a possibility that people who contract the disease or will contract the disease, unfortunately, so it's an inconvenience truth, will be able to survive. And so let's look at what has been going on in the country. First of all, let's start with what are the protocols, what are the measures that were put into place by the Liberian government in collaboration with the health authorities in the country. We learned that when this pandemic got to the point that every nation needed to take some actions in order to minimize the spreads of this deadly epidemic. Like any other government, the government of Liberia came down with some protocols, some measures, that will help to minimize, or curtail the spread of this virus. We are aware that Initially, the government decided that any person, any citizen traveling from any coronavirus hot zone, and hot zone at the time was being classified as any country that had reported more than 200 cases, and any citizen or anybody for that matter who traveled from any of those countries, that person was going to being quarantined. That person, sorry that somebody was trying to call me and the person tried to distract me. Yeah, don't do that. I'm performing a very important task. Yeah. So as I was saying earlier, the government put into place a measure that if anybody travel from any of the coronavirus house zone, any country that had reported up to 200 cases was considered to be a coronavirus or hot zone. So that was the measure that were put into place, and that if the person came from any of those countries, that person needed to be tested first of all at the airport, and then after being tested, the person will be quarantined for at least 14 days so as to observe whether or not the person actually is carrying the virus. The reason is that health officials have shared some information that when one contracts the virus, the person does not show symptoms right away. It's hard to tell. The person, when tested, will not be tested positive. Sometimes it takes about sometimes 14 days before the symptoms start to show or for the person to be tested positive. And so they put the measure in place that anybody traveling from any hard zone needed to be quarantined for 14 days. So then the question is, did the authority, did the government that put this measure into place implement this particular measure faithfully and fairly? Was that measure applied to every citizen or anybody traveling into the country? That is the question that many people are divided on. Some people believe that the government was being selective, very selective in the implementation of this very measure that was put into place by the government itself. Some are even going further and saying the very government that put into place the measure was the one who was violating the very measure it has put into place in order to minimize the spread of the virus. And so we want to know whether the big man attitude, the big shot attitude in Liberia, in any way helped to undermine the measure that was put into place by the government. Did that happen in Liberia? Because all around the world, these measures are being put into place, as we know, and citizens of those countries, including the authorities, everybody tried to abide by the measure because the virus, as we know, is contagious. And so people needed to respect or need to respect any measures that have been recommended by health authority to the civil authority. We all, everybody needed to respect that. And so you remember at some point an official of government by the name Dr. Nathaniel Blama came into the country. And Nathaniel Brahma, from all we know now, was the first person who was reported coronavirus confirmed in the country. And so when he came, there was report that Mr. Blama should have been quarantined because he has returned from a coronavirus hot zone. My understanding is that he has traveled from Switzerland, and that Switzerland have reported above or around 200 cases, and so he needed to be quarantined. Now we saw pictures of Dr. Blama on Facebook that he posted. He took a selfie with health authority, so possibilities are that you know Either he followed the protocol that were put into place, by being tested, and maybe they tested his temperature and other protocols that have been put into place. Maybe they may have asked him about people he might have come in contact with. All of those things, we learn those things happen. But Mr. Blama was let go. He went to his house. My understanding is that Mr. Blama said he was being self quarantined. Now, that's not what the government, that's what the government tried to tell us, that Mr. Blama was being self quarantined. But according to the measure that was put into play, as you all are aware, anybody from a coronavirus hard zone needed to be quarantined for a number of 14 days. In the case of Dr. Blama, it never happened. And I think they said that he said he was going to self quarantine. Self quarantine itself has risk to it. But then, long story short, Mr. Blama uh, went home, and at some point, many of you watched the video on Facebook. He uh, the government sent some medical team to his house to try to get him, and, from his house, to take him to a place where he needed to stay, as a way of, following that measure of quarantine that was being put into place by the government. But the fact that Mr. Blummer had left without going to a quarantine center, that in itself is another thing that, some people are not buying, because when the government came up with that measure, they needed to have a quarantine center. And what we learned is that when the government came up with that measure, the government at the time did not have a quarantine center. So Mr. Blama was let go. So why would the government announce a measure that quarantine was a measure to follow by anybody traveling from hard zone, but then will not have a quarantine center at the time? But later on, we heard that there was a quarantine center. And so when some other citizens, like Mo Ali, when Mo Ali returned to Liberia, we learned that Mo Ali was quarantined for a period of 14 days. Another person we learned who got quarantined was Mr. Alexander Cummings of the ANC, the political leader of the ANC. We also learned that he got quarantined. This is a fact because Mr. Cummings appeared on 50/50, the T-Max show, on the phone while he was at his quarantine center, and he reported that the health officials there were being very professional, and they were testing his temperature and every day. So Mr. Cummings submitted himself, to the protocol. He went into a quarantine center. Mo Ali, who also having to be an opposition figure, another opposition figure, also submitted himself to the protocol by being quarantined at a quarantine center. But unlike Dr. Blama, who we understand works for the government, was never quarantined. And so that is the politics that is going on. So people are saying the government is being selective. The government is allow big sharks, people who are within the government, to not abide by its own measure put into place. One of which is being quarantined when you travel from a coronavirus hard zone. And so does that in itself undermines government effort in minimizing the spread of the coronavirus? The only thing we can conclude is that everybody needed to or needs to abide by the procedure by being quarantined if you travel from any coronavirus hard zone. Now, here I focus on Liberia. Sometime back, we had student activist Martin Colley. Martin Colley reported when Liberia registered additional cases, and this time around, the name of those persons were not called. Martin Colley was here on Focus on Liberia on this very program, The Hour of Politics, and he said that if a lady who goes by the name of Fatu was one of those who was being confirmed, And when we pressed Mountain, all he had to tell us was that he got his information from a credible source within the uh, 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 in the medical from the medical authorities, and that his source was credible, and it was no reason for him to doubt that the information that he had gotten was credible. And then after that, Fatu had a video and saying that that which Martin said was completely far from the truth. I watched the video, and she looked so healthy. I'm not saying that because she looked so healthy at the time she went live and did that video that that means she is not carrying the virus. Neither am I also saying that you know. So maybe we should leave it right there. But again, the point here is that Martin has said she having to be one of those who was pronounced positive about this particular coronavirus. She came to be debunk it in the video. And so, Fatu, if you are out there, we will appreciate it. You can reach out to us here at Focus on Liberia. But we want to believe the point you were trying to make is that you had no coronavirus, and whatever Martin said is completely far from the truth. And so that's why we. But again, it is also important to know that Fatu, like Blama, upon return from another Ebola, I mean not Ebola, coronavirus hard zone. I don't know why I'm talking about Ebola. From another coronavirus hard zone, which is Germany, she boarded her plane. She posted about it on Facebook when she got on a plane that she was on her way to Liberia. She returned to Liberia and she arrived. And Fatu arrived after Blama. Fatu arrived, I believe, either during the time Mr. Cummings and Mo Ali were being placed in the quarantine center. There is no report whatsoever that Fatu was self quarantined. And Martin Colley has also informed us here that Fatu is a friend of the president, that she was invited on the invitation of the president. That is an information that was given by Martin. But what we know is Fatu is a Liberian based in Germany who moved to or who traveled to Liberia during the time the government had put this measure into place about the coronavirus. And there's no information whatsoever that Fatu was placed in a quarantine center. Fatu also shared a post on Facebook when she had arrived in Liberia with Sekou Kalasco, who having to be the presidential aide. Uh, some people said that Kalasco was the one who picked her up from the airport, and Fatu posted on Facebook with that. When I went to do my research to confirm that, earlier I saw the post when she arrived in Liberia, and later on I went to see if that post was still on her Facebook page. That post was taken down. So that's what I was able to gather. So that is reason to believe that yes, Fatu was being picked up by Sekou Kalasco, and it also speaks to the fact that that may be true. That part of Martin information he provided may be true, that maybe Fatu is a special friend to the president of the Republic of Liberia. But again, we are talking about the politics of COVID-19. Some people are saying the government is being selective in the implementation of its own measures or protocol being put into place to minimize the spread of this pandemic. That people who are either close to the government have been let go when they arrive in the country and now be put into a quarantine center, whereas people who are not out of friend with the president, maybe opposition, are being forced to be the one to be quarantined. Few two examples we gave earlier: Mo Ali, Alexander Cummings were self quarantined, were put in the quarantine center. Nathaniel Blaman, Fatu, who is alleged to be a friend of the president. Whether that is true, we can't prove that. It's information that was given to us here at Focus on Liberia by student Martin Colley when he appeared here. But again, to speak to that, it may be true that Fatu is friend with the president. I did further research. I saw pictures of her and the president. dating far back at 1995. Those pictures are out on Facebook. In one of the pictures, she sat on the lap of the president, and the picture was taken. That suggests that yes, she must be friend with this president, and it has been a long time friendship. Whatever friendship it is, I don't know. It's not mean to say that. But what I want to establish here is that yes, she knows the president. It's something that she herself have talked about. She friend with the president, and I don't think there's anything wrong with human being friend with another human being. Whatever friendship it is other people business to judge that. But Fatu was now placed into a quarantine center, and Fatu is being alleged to be a friend, a very close friend of the president. That suggests that the government was being selective because Fatu is, or somebody close to the government or friend with the president. She was now placed in a quarantine center, same as was the case with that Nathaniel Blaman, who having to be an official of government. Now, in the case of Moa Lee and Mr. Elizana Coming, who having to be opposition figures, these people were placed in a quarantine center. So that is the politics of the whole protocol, thereby undermining government own measures that are put into place to minimize the spread of the pandemic. And as we speak, like we told you earlier when we updated you from the very start of the show, uh, Liberia has reported 13 cases now. Of the 13 cases, 3 deaths and 3 recoveries. So that means that Liberia is on an upward spiral. I live here in the United States. I remember sometime around, I think March 7 or 6, the U.S. government reported a death below 700. Uh, 3 weeks later, the U.S. death rate is in the thousand. It's in several thousand. That is how fast this thing spreads. This is how contagious this disease is. So the point here is that for the government to show a clear indication that it's been selective is not fair to the people of Liberia, and we think that the government can do better. Folks in cyberspace, you are watching Focus on Liberia on our program, The Hour of Politics, with me, Anthony Sie, and we are discussing the topic, the politics of coronavirus. And so going further, let's talk about the government own efforts, or further effort by the government, in its fight against the coronavirus. We all know that the president released a son, a coronavirus son. So let's talk about the son. Was the song timely? Was the song purposeful? Was the song to the point? Did the song carry the rightful message? Some people are saying no, some people are saying yes. Now, I know many of you will want to know, what do I think as the host of this show? I think that the song was timely. The song came at the time the coronavirus issue was picking up in Liberia, and people needed to pay attention and be able to follow the rules and be able to follow the measures being put into play by our health authorities. And so the song came at a time, and when you listen to the song, very beautiful song, being sung by the president. Some people who are in the opposition are coming after that song, or rightfully so. That's what politicians do, and they say, look, yeah, some of them said the song is a good song, beautifully sung. The purpose of the message is wise enough, but is that what Liberia needs right now? That's the question they are asking. They said this pandemic is so serious that singing a song, or a president singing a song, will not be able to call it. One person who I listened to, who more like dismissed the whole idea of the song, the purpose of the song, the message of the song, well, Mr. Henry Pedro Costard, and he's kind of like trashed the song and term it as, I mean, I don't want to use his language, but he more or less said, that song is useless, it's not useful, and it is not meaningful, and that's how he reacted to it. But many oppositions people are listening to say that it's a good song, it's a beautiful song. The song is well sung, the message is on point, it's timely, and all that. And so we are talking about the politics of coronavirus. A beautiful song was released by the president. Other people welcome it because the message speaks to the issue that is confronting us as a people. And so we understand that a song can go further than somebody making a speech because anybody can listen to the song and be captivated by the rhythm, can be captivated by the beat, can be captivated by the brilliance of the song and be able to pick up that message and apply it for their own safety and the safety of their family. So if you ask me whether the song was purposeful? I would say yes, it was purposeful. Was the song timely? I would say yeah, it was timely. But again, everything in Liberia is about politics, and so the politics came in. Now, we also learn that other people are saying the president used some money and to produce the coronavirus song. That's what others are saying. And that where the politics is also setting in. Another politics here is that Mr. Henry Pedro Costa, Costa said that some money was being taken to renovate the 14 military hospital because the president is saying that, oh, now that we have a coronavirus on our hands, and we need to make sure that all our medical facilities are equipped and will be there to be used, for people who will contract the disease. The president make a decision that some money should be sent to the military hospital so that the military hospitals can be completed. Costa believed that that is not a wise decision on the part of the president, and he was able to criticize that. So again, it's all politics that is going on around it. Now you need to figure out what the right thing to be done, and my role is to share with you the politics that is playing on out there by people who are participants into the politics of Liberia. What do I want? I want Liberians to be united, just as we got united at some point when we had the Delhi Ebola and we were able to fight and be able to defeat Ebola, even though Liberia lost more than 4,000, I think 4,800 people to that pandemic. And so that puts us in a unique position. We have seen something like this before, and we know how it devastated the country. Not only our health sector, but also the economy of our country. We know how it devastated so many families. And we succeeded with the help of other nations and our united effort. That's how Liberia was able to defeat Ebola. And so, learning from that, there should be no politics whatsoever in the fight against the coronavirus. But Liberia being, polarized politically, it's no surprise that we are seeing all of these politics. And our role here, focus on Liberia, is to share with you what folks are saying in this fight against this pandemic. Now, we also know that the government, in her effort to control, to minimize the spread of the coronavirus, decided that churches should be closed. And some of you might have remembered the case of Prince Johnson when the police director reached to Prince Johnson church when Prince Johnson was preaching, and he wanted to ensure that the church was being shut down. And Prince Johnson was in flight with his sermon, and so the thing is, all around the world, churches are closed. Even here in the United States, people are worshiping online. Information coming from Liberia is that some other churches are obeying, some other churches are not obeying. I watched a video of a church that gathered 8 people and they said they were praying, and you could see the police there was like in the night telling them to leave because social distancing is one of the measures that health authorities and civil authorities have emphasized on so heavily that it will help to minimize the spread of the virus. Because one of the ways, or the major way people contract the virus, they say, is that when you are within six, no, when you are within 5, 4 to 3 feet to another individual who you may not know is carrying the virus. When the person sneezes, the droplets, when they fall on you, possibility are that you will contract the disease. And so, to avoid others contracting the disease, they came up with this measure of social distancing, that people should be able to stay apart from each other within 6 feet. And in our churches, we are never 6 feet apart. In most social gathering, we are never 6 feet apart, and health officials are emphasizing on this measure, and that's the recommendation they make to civil authorities, and civil authorities are doing all they can all around the world to enforce it. As a result of that, in most Western world, people who do computer job, people who are in the offices, they are working from home. Teachers are working from home. Students are going to school or from home. In learning now is not only in colleges, it has moved down to people in as low as first and third grade, which is a difficult decision that several authorities have to make so as to minimize the spread of the disease. But in our home country, Liberia, is that happening? And so, to see some churches more like hesitant to abide by, you know, the measures being put into play by our government, we think it's not good for their own health. They are not only putting their own health at risk, but they are also putting the health of the nation at risk. And we think they need to pay attention. The sooner that this thing is defeated, the better it will be for all of us. And the only way we can do that sooner is when we all abide and obey all the measures that have been put into place. But again, the government in its effort also, it's not restricted to the church, and the church is some churches are not they're trying to be disobedient about it. We know in Liberia our God business is big, but hey, God gave us senses. When there's a disease, there's a reason. The last time I checked my Bible, I know that you can pray anywhere because the Bible says God is everywhere. That's why we were told when we were little kids, God is everywhere. So even in your room when you pray, the Almighty God will listen to you. You don't necessarily have to go into the church. And so we think our churches should be able to abide by that for not only the safety of their members, but also the families of those members and their own families as well. So, talking about minimizing congestion or congested areas, our government also make a decision to class street setters who usually are clustered together at various business centers, mainly in Monrovia. And one case in point is the case with Wallace. In Wallace, or at Wallace, the government, the marketeers allege that the government did not inform them, did not give them prior notice that they were coming to remove them from where they set down Wallace. The government did not inform the people, the marketer have alleged. And even report from Front Page and other newspapers that we research confirm what was being said by the marketers. We watch videos of marketers speaking out. They vented out their frustration. Even some politicians, some people even in the corner of the government were dismissed that the government will not inform its citizens who depend on their daily sale to feed their family, will move early in the morning and destroy those structures that were being built by the marketers that they rely on to feed their family. Our government did that. The government did that on the pretext that they try to minimize congestion or minimize people coming together to avoid or also minimize the spread of the coronavirus. Uh, I think the government could have done better. Many people said the government could have informed the citizen that because of this virus and the fact that where you sell, you are always clustered together, you, the sellers, plus also customers who are coming around, we have decided that you should not sell here anymore. We gave you from this time to this time. We will come to remove your structures. And that's why others have said they needed to be informed so that they will take their things away. But for the government to have moved without informing these people, it is not that the government took the structures away. The government destroyed the structures, broke them down into pieces, and just trashed them. Why will our government behave in that manner? Doesn't the government understand that these people rely on these little market tables that they have to feed their family on a daily basis? Isn't the government aware of the very harsh economic situation that's in the country? And the other thing is that if you want to see these people removed, if your intention, as you demonstrated, was that you would destroy those structures, have you asked yourself how would they get money to build those structures? Did the government make a decision to relocate them? If so, where? And in relocating the people, was it necessary for them to be given some compensation or some incentive? The people needed to be incentivized so that they will see reason to move for their own safety. Within the government needed to communicate with them that for your own safety and the safety of your family, and in order to avoid a spread of this virus, as it happened in the case of Ebola, this is what we want to do. Some people are arguing that maybe the government should have given each market table $100 and they could use the $100 to relocate. Now, according to Daily Observer, the government decided that these marketeers should be moved to the Omega market. Some people call it Omega Tower. There where they should move. But what did the government do to encourage these people, these citizens, to move? Did the government give them any compensation for destroying their tables? No. Did the government give them time to move? No. So, for the time period, their entire businesses got disrupted and they didn't have the opportunity to sell for a week and maybe going to two. These are people that rely on daily sale for their own economic survival. So, the question is within a 2 weeks period, and I can say 3 weeks period or to a month, to find a place to start selling again, earning some money again to feed their family. How will these people survive? I guess they will have to survive on the little they saved. Maybe they have been they have been keeping uh, to reinvest so as to be able to continue their business for their own economic survival. Many of these people have kids who are going to school. They rely on those businesses to pay their school fees. And our government moved in without prior notice. Now only they destroy their properties, their tables, they render land completely businessless. And it was after that now they start telling them they have to go to the Omega market. What did you give them for the time they have to move to Omega Town? The fact that you, the one who destroyed their market structures, the government gave them money to replace that which it has damaged. We are yet to hear any report whatsoever on that. Folks in cyberspace, you are watching Focus on Liberia on our program, The Hour of Politics, with me, Anthony Sie, and we are discussing the politics of COVID-19. And so the marketeers continue to complain that our government is being selective in even moving people from what we all understand now to be congested market areas. We read that the government has moved to the rail area after it has cleared the people from the Wallace area has moved to rail area. Some of the marketeers are saying that there are some people that have been asked to move, while others have been asked to stay or have not been made to move. And some of them are accusing police authority that police have taken money from some of these people, and that is why they are leaving them alone and going after those of them who wouldn't have money to give to the police. I don't know how true that is, but Front Page reported that they even cited the names of those marketeers who were able to make the allegation. But according to the police spokesman, they said the government operation is non-selective. The government is trying to make sure that although business areas that are so congested, they want to make sure they decongest those areas so as to minimize the spread of COVID-19. Remember now, Liberia has reported 13 cases. So government said is making effort. But is the effort being made in a way that people will understand? Are the marketeers being given prior notice? And if you are moving these people, is there a possibility for government to assist in the process so that the people can be feel respected, so that they will be able to cooperate? But we are understanding that some people feel that they don't have place to go, so they're more than trying to either come by and it's not happening. So it has become a chaotic situation. And, like most government around the world, if we can say it, no government was prepared for this. Every government more than overlooked this thing. The United States of America is one case in point. So, but let's look at, do we really have coronavirus in Liberia? Other people are questioning that we do have the virus in Liberia. One of such person is Representative Yeke Koluba. Yeke Koluba, many of you know him. He's a vocal opposition guy. He talks in a way that is his own style. Some people like it, some people don't like it, but Yeke Koluba said there's no COVID-19 in Liberia, and that the government, he accuses the government of making us to believe that the pandemic is in Liberia just so to benefit, just so to take about the $15 million that have been made available by the international community against the fight against the fight on coronavirus. That's why Yeke Koluba is saying, is Yeke Koluba telling the truth? If Yeke Koluba is telling the truth, that means that the health authorities are lying to us. If the health authorities are telling the truth, that means Yeke Koluba is lying to us. And the thing is to dismiss that the virus is not in Liberia. What proof does Yeke Koluba have to say that the virus is not in Liberia? Is he a medical professional? Does he have the understanding of health issues? Does he know anything about infectious disease to say that we don't have COVID-19 in Liberia? How did he come up with that information? Did he just wake up and just throw the thing out there just because he want to get the fame? I don't know. I'm just asking these questions because we told you we are discussing the politics of COVID-19. Why we a representative who represent a good number of people, knowing that this disease has killed thousands and thousands of people. Over 1 million people have contracted this disease in the entire world. And he is saying we don't have it in Liberia. Where is he getting the information from? So Yeke Koluba is trying to prove the health practitioners in Liberia wrong. So who should we listen to? Yeke Koluba? Also, talk show host Michael Gaiman and talk show host D Flow. These two individuals also believe that the whole coronavirus thing is a scam in Liberia. They don't believe that we have COVID-19 in Liberia. It reminds us about how people doubted this Ebola when it was first reported in Liberia. People doubted it. And we saw the impact and we saw the consequence on the country. And so I would say that it is risky. Even as a human being, you have your right to doubt, to question, and to not believe. But when we are talking about a pandemic of this magnitude, with evidence of deaths around the world, it is best to hold that than to communicate it when you do not have the ability to prove that such disease does not exist. I think that's the right thing to do. And the more dangerous thing to do, in my opinion, is to say that it does not exist, and many people listening to you and not abide by the protocols being put into place by government or by the health officials, and thereby putting themselves and their families at risk, and then bringing another untold suffering, human suffering, on the country. And so this disease should not and must not be politicized. All right, folks, and the government around the world continue to make efforts. So let us do a competitive analysis of what are other governments in Africa and maybe some governments around the world are doing. Let's look at the leadership test and how leaders around the world are responding to this disease. And let's look at how our leaders in Liberia are doing also in the fight against this disease to protect our people. Now, we learn that the first thing that is known to most people who try to follow this is that leaders around the world are having, if not daily press conferences, then they are having weekly or day after the other press conferences to update their people about what is unfolding, telling them that they are on top of this and that they are finding all the resources and they are developing all the measures to minimize the spread of this virus. In the US, we see that the President of the United States participates in a press conference on a daily basis, including Sunday. Is that the case in our country? I think Liberians and leaders in Liberia should be more alarmed than any other group of people in the world because we just saw a disease of this kind in our country that took away 4,800 of our citizens. So, my expectation, and I believe that might have been the expectation of more people or some people, is that our leaders will be able to have daily press conferences to inform our people, to encourage them, and remind them about the measures that have been put into place and what they are doing. But again, let's look at what leaders around the world are doing. So the first thing is that we hope our people in Liberia are updating. I know the Ministry of Information carries out a weekly press conference uh, on a Thursday, and I'm sure they will do that. But my thing is that enough? Weekly basis, is it enough? When powerful countries with all the resources are called pens down with this thing and are having press conferences The governor of New York, every day there's a press conference. And I don't know when last day people have seen a disease of this kind, but they are not taking chances. Should we be doing that? Why are we not doing that if we're not doing that? Is it because we don't have the resources? Does it also speak to the fact that our leaders are not on their game? I don't know. But in Ghana, like in other countries where leaders are putting into place measures, are bringing about things that will bring relief to their citizens, they are taking actions. In Ghana, we learn that the president has increased the pay of health workers, those who are at the front line, increased their pay, their basic salary by 50%. They have increased salaries of health officials by 50%. And I think that is commendable. And if it is possible for our government to look in that direction, I think it will motivate healthcare workers who we desperately need right now to be on the front line to combat the deadly disease. Government should be able to do that. And in Ghana, the 50% increase in the healthcare workers' salary will continue from the month of March all the way to June. And I'm thinking that if the trend continues, they might be able to extend or maintain their 50% salary increase for healthcare workers in Ghana. That's what the president of Ghana has done. And also, in addition to that, the president of Ghana uh, has taken an action that taxes for healthcare workers will be zero. So zero tax will be collected from these healthcare workers in Ghana who are helping to fight. And that will be from the month of April to June. Zero taxes or zero tax will be collected from healthcare workers in Ghana. And we also heard, I don't know how true it is, this piece of information, we were not able to confirm this one before this broadcast time, that in Ghana for water and electricity, for 3 months, Ghanaians will not be asked to pay light bill and water bill for 3 months. We could not confirm that up to our broadcast time. So governments around the world, are trying to come up with ways that will help their people, especially those in the health field who are on the front line. So that's what the government of Ghana and the politics is that some opposition people are saying why Ghana is taking these kind of measures to motivate people, in their fight against the virus or to give their citizens a break. In Liberia, they are accusing our president of only releasing a son. What is a son going to do? What the son going to do? Some people are asking, what the son going to do? Okay, the people hear the message, and then what next? That's what other people are saying. And next door in Freetown, Sierra Leone, President Bio, they have their own measures into place. Social distancing is across the board. Social distancing is across the board. And so in Sierra Leone, besides social distancing and the issue of the 14-day quarantine should somebody return from a coronavirus hard zone, I almost say Ebola, from coronavirus hard zone, that person must be quarantined for 14 days, something that our government also put into place, except that we got to know it was more like selective. Some people uh, were made to abide, and where some people were let go, which we think was not right for on the part of our leaders. So, Manuel Bio, besides the health measures and protocol being put into place, there's a relief package that he was able to announce. In Sierra Leone, he has reduced the price of fuel from 9,000 leon to 7,000 leon because he says a measure that will help. And then for healthcare workers, according to what we received, the report we received from Sierra Leone. We have a West African correspondent who sent us this update from Freetown, Sierra Leone. He said Manabio has mandated that all healthcare workers should wear the mask. It's a surgical mask that has been provided, according to him, for all medical workers or healthcare workers in Freetown, Sierra Leone. It has been provided for them. And also, the healthcare workers, they have all of these things to motivate them. We didn't hear about salary increase and all that. As for now, in Freetown, nothing of that sort. But in Freetown also, what the government of Manabio has done is to provide some relief for the vulnerable people in the country. The vulnerable people, those who fall in that category, are the blind, the disabled. Uh, the government is giving them 250,000 leon, one bag of rice, and some domestic items for the vulnerable population in Freetown. Again, that's the blind and the disabled. The government of Freetown, has released the package for them, as a way of helping those people who are out or not working, because of disability, the most vulnerable in that country. Marabio has made the decision to give them 250,000 leon, one bag of rice, and some domestic items. Folks, in cyberspace, you are watching Focus on Liberia, and we are discussing the politics of COVID-19 in Liberia. Another thing we don't want to forget is that washing hands has become one of the measures that is key in this fight against coronavirus. Now, in Liberia, it seems to be politics is getting into this, and the politicians who are doing this thing are getting criticized by the citizens, and I would say rightfully so. In the case of the president, many of you have seen the bucket. There is a bucket with the president picture on it while he was seen washing hands, and there's a writing on it, WEA's project. Some people think the president is running campaign. We are in a crisis situation. These are troubling times. This is not the time for a leader or any politician for that matter to be giving items that are intended to prevent or minimize the spread of this pandemic with their picture on it. Some people are questioning that. Do they have a point right there? Is it about time that you put your picture on the bucket as the president of the country, intended to encourage people into hands washing to minimize the spread, and your picture is on it, and not only is your picture on it, you have there is a WEA project. People are asking, are these people running campaign? Are these people seriously running campaign? Does it make sense to you that the president has a picture on a bucket that is intended for citizens to use and wash their hands? People who support the president are justifying it. Yes, nothing wrong with it. They go as far as talking about UNICEF, United Nations, and other humanitarian organizations. That even when people are in a distress situation, when people are in despair, when people were at the refugee camps, even rice that was being given to people who fled the war in displaced camps, that the humanitarian institutions had their picture or emblems on those items. And so they argue that it is right for the president to do so. What do you think? Very soon I'll be opening the phone lines. And also, Joel Harvard Taylor, the vice president, also gave out some buckets. Like the president, her picture is on the bucket. People are asking, is she running campaign? Some people think that no, it's not necessary. This is not the time for you to pull your picture on something that you are giving people in order to help them not to contract the virus, but carrying your picture, are those who are justifying for these politicians that they have all reasons to put their picture on it. Are they right? It said that they spend their money, and so those who are beneficiary of these items need to know who is providing those items. The politics of COVID-19 in Liberia. They now most talk about Senator A.B. Darius DeLong also gave buckets. I understand Sir Joseph also giving buckets. It has become a bucket campaign in Liberia. Everybody giving buckets and everybody putting their picture on it. Except for Darius DeLong, we understand who did not put his picture on the bucket. But some way, somehow, we got to know that Darius DeLong, his team, provided buckets to residents in Monrovia. It's you to decide whether it's right in a crisis situation for politicians to be giving buckets to people with their pictures on it. I will open the phone line soon and it will be yours to have your say on that. Now, let me say this. The issue of the bucket, is it helping that much? If you wash your hands, what will help more? Is it social distancing that will help more? Or it's just by washing your hands that will help more? Are these people giving them just a bucket? Or are they giving some things that go with the bucket, like chloride, like hand sanitizer? Are they giving those things as well? And if they are giving those things, do they have their pictures on those things as well? Folks in cyberspace, you are watching Focus on Liberia. This is the hour of politics with me, Anthony C. And we are discussing the politics of COVID-19. Folks, I will be opening the phone line soon. So I'm taking a musical break. And after that break, I will open the phone lines for you to participate. So stay right there. Don't go anywhere. It is your time to participate because this is the hour of politics. You all have been following this.